Welcome to Spiritual Psychology, and I'm here today with Dr. Sara Smith, who's an expert in pelvic floor dysfunction and function, has developed a method that she calls core alignment that I'm really excited to learn more about, and uses this revolutionary approach to resolve career and personal stress with her clients and maybe with you guys today. It's great if we can give people some take-home stuff that they can do. It's great to connect with you, Sara.
Thank you so much, Renee. I'm so glad to be here.
So tell us about pelvic floor issues from your perspective.
Absolutely. Well, we could talk about that all day long, but from my perspective, the pelvic floor issues, thank goodness, are becoming a little bit more, maybe moderately more known about and talked about, probably thanks to all the different streams of media that we have today. I think more and more is becoming at the fingertips of others. And from my perspective, the pelvic floor really has been hidden, hushed, shamed, really completely stamped out of our society. And by society, I mean a lot of societies on a global scale, for centuries and centuries. And so
Even millennia.
yeah, exactly. Millennia. Yes. And so it's something that even with more of a focus on, somehow it still falls very far under the radar. Most of us just want the body to work, especially the pelvic floor. And we really only think about it when it's not working.
So first, for people who don't even know what it means, when we're talking about pelvic floor, like what kind of flooring is that? Is it linoleum? Is it hardwood? Like what kind of floor are we dealing with here?
Yes. Let me bring in my model.
Oh,
yes.
yay.
I know. One of my favorite things was I'm a retired clinician now, in the sense where I don't have like a practice in which I am working with 24/7. But I would get ladies, who are in their teens all the way up to 99, and was my oldest client. And what I loved was some of the older women would come in and they would go, "You are not going to make me get on the floor, are you? Like, is pelvic floor therapy?" Please say.
Floor. Right. That's
right.
the carpeted floor. That's
exactly. That's the carpet. Exactly.
Right.
So what it is, we kind of talk about the pelvic floor sometimes just kind of is used ambiguously of like just the whole entire area of the pelvis, but it really is specifically, there are three layers of musculature that make up the pelvic floor. And each of them kind of works independently as well as together. And so if you think about where you are sitting right now, Renee, like that, you've got your two sit bones that we're sitting on, and the tailbone in the back, and then the pubic bone in the front. And so right in between all of this is, if you're sitting on a clock, that is the area of the pelvic floor and that musculature. Yeah. But it often encompasses several other different groups of muscles that make up what's called the core. And that includes the diaphragm and these little multifidus that go from basically spinal segment to spinal segment, and the transverse abdominis, which is the deepest abdominal muscles. So the pelvic floor musculature includes kind of, many pieces to it, parts that are directly related, and then also parts that kind of are secondary. And then from there, when you hear the term like, what is your pelvic floor, is more in terms of like what it's doing in function. And so what it's supposed to do, because there are many of us who are dealing with pelvic floor dysfunction, but what it's supposed to do is to strengthen and kind of provide support for your entire skeletal system, your nervous system. It's supposed to aid in the ability to feel pleasure. It is supposed to aid in the ability for you to have a normal bowel movement, to be able to, go to the bathroom at the appropriate time, and that not be, any sort of leaking going on in the pants. Right. So it's, it does so many things. And symbolically, when you think about that,
Mm.
It's a very, very supportive structure. Yet,
Or not.
right.
Right. Because you're
Yeah.
talking about all, I know for myself, when my work is also very body centered, as far as the body tells the truth. The body keeps the score, to use that, right? And so whenever I'm working with someone to bring healing, they're coming in with a presenting issue that somehow lives in their body, whether it's anxiety or depression, like they're feeling it, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so where they feel it in their body is the entry point of where it's stored. And one of the things that's very obvious to me in working with people is that most of us live like from our neck up, or maybe from our heart up, and all that stuff below there, that's the, like, we don't talk about, that's messy, it's dirty, it's scary, it's inappropriate, it's all those things. And so, you know, like all the stuff you just talked about, leaking and
Yes.
sexual pleasure and, you know, bowel movements and things that how do we release things, or how do we receive, and
Right.
and all that, if it's healthy, is like functional and supportive and flowing, and if it's not,
Exactly. Yeah, it houses so much shame. You know, one of the things that I talk about a lot is that bony structure that I was just showing you of the pelvis. It is one of the safest, you know, if we think from the beginning of time, a bowl or a basket is what we would always carry,
right,
you know, things in, right? And that's kind of the bowl of the pelvis, we'll call it. And it really is the safest place to store that which we don't know what to do with.
oh, that's such a powerful way to talk about that.
Yeah.
That is really, really interesting, because I notice, I actually just taught I just dropped on YouTube, in fact, chakra meditation, and where you breathe up into the different energy centers in your body, you breathe up the back and then down the front. And one of the things is I teach people that is their body awareness. And a lot of people, it's hard for them to even have awareness of that lower part of their body. They're so used to just skipping over it, because of all that stuff that's stored there that we don't know what to do with.
Yeah. Yeah. It can become extremely scary for people. And it's what got me into the work that I do today, and you know, being in a space, you know, with a patient like I used to be, any patients, but see, like when you start spending time on your pelvic floor and having to address it, it unlocks things that have been there forever and ever. It unlocks dreams. It unlocks your purpose. It unlocks relationship issues that you haven't known what to do with. You know, it unlocks all sorts of kind of the difficult and the beautiful. And that's very overwhelming for most people. I mean, you know, I don't know about you, but I would venture you're probably similar to me of, you know, I'm somebody who's like, yeah, let's get into it. You know, you know, the juicier, the better.
Yeah.
Right. But for most, I think the word terrifying is fair to use. There's a lot there. And when you can show that you're going to also get to some of the beauty of it and the essence, you know, of yourself, by kind of going into some of those also uncomfortable or shadowy spaces, it's important, you know, but I think it also, it's important to like tread with care. You know, there's a lot of awesome and important information out there and practices out there now, you know, about female embodiment, about, you know, embracing your intimacy and sexuality and, you know, really living from that place of pleasure. I think coming from a more trauma-informed response, we have to be careful with that. I think that's appropriate for some. I think for others, it's too much too fast.
No,
we need to kind of,
we need a container.
yeah.
We need a container.
Yeah.
You know, I'm actually really moved. Hold on. I'm going to get a thing.
Please. Yeah.
And so this is a piece of work this is a diagram of a work that's called the path work, that talks about the organization of the self. And I use this as a teaching tool for people. And I just want to, because as you were talking, and I always keep it behind me, and it reminds me of what you're talking about, right? Which is this like bowl of the self. This is what they call the personality self. And we could look at this like that bony structure of the pelvis.
Yes.
This is all that stuff that's stored in there that we don't know what to do with. Yeah.
Right.
And
wow.
Carl Jung called this the shadow. And in pathwork, they call it the lower self. It's all the parts of ourselves that are like underdeveloped, or that we're ashamed of, or that we don't have a place for, and they all just get stuffed in there. And this is the higher self that exists within all of us. That is right. That's there.
Wow.
Underneath, and we have to go often through these other parts to find the dreams, the purpose, the true empowerment that we have. I just love the congruence of that. It's like
that's so cool.
Yeah, it's like that's what you're doing from this place of this, the bowl. What did you call it? The pelvic bowl?
The pelvic bowl. Yeah.
That I've never heard that before.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's one of the things I always will ask people is,
back up on the wall.
No, please. Yeah. One of the things that I'll always ask people is, it's like, what is the safest bony structure in your body in which to hold things? And one would think the skull, and, that's definitely, I think again, where most of us are focused, and absolutely, right. I mean, we hold so much here, but not.
This is so interesting.
Not the hard stuff.
This feels like, so see if this resonates with you. So I work a lot. We live on a plane of duality, and I talk a lot about yin yang and masculine, feminine as things that we have within ourselves. Yeah. And certainly they exist in culture and they exist in our relationships, but within ourselves, we have a healthy masculine and a healthy feminine, or an unhealthy masculine and an unhealthy feminine. And the masculine is the more intellectual, rational, physically oriented action person or part of us. And then the feminine is the more emotional, intuitive, relational, dream, and non-ordinary reality, creative focus. And it feels like the head is this like masculine bowl, and the pelvis is the feminine. Oh, this is so exciting for me, Sara. It's like gonna chill.
I know.
That's epic. I love that.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things that's like just a soapbox and just gets me so frustrated is that we focus so much on the heart. And while I believe that is absolutely vital, if you look at the structure, especially of the ribs, there's space there. And so the heart is, I believe, a byproduct of what you're finding in the pelvis, both physically speaking, mentally, emotionally speaking, energetically speaking. So, I find that like I'm just on this mission to kind of encourage us to go a little bit more.
Go deeper.
You
got to go deeper. No, this is, so if we think about, I can't believe how excited I am.
I'm so glad.
Think about,
me too.
About this idea that's very pregnant in our culture right now of the rising of the feminine and the divine feminine. That isn't heart. For me, even as you describe it, the heart is the meeting place of the mind and the deeper body, right?
Yeah.
It's the place it's in between the head.
Yeah.
Right. That,
yes.
And the pelvis is very much like the feminine, both within ourselves, in our own aversion to things that are messy or unknown or mysterious, or, like you said, downright terrifying. We're all terrified of the feminine because she's unpredictable and will create new things that we couldn't imagine. But there's also, I'm going to stop there because I have another thing to say, but what do you think about that? That's really interesting.
I second it. I think it's spot on. And I would add that, of course, historically, we started, from the feminine. And so I just, after studying and intuiting, and all the different things, and kind of things being knowledge just kind of being placed upon me, I really do believe, that it has been that fear of that power and that potential within us has really been stamped out. And it's time now for it to kind of rise, and come again. And it also can be done so in a way that's just so beautifully healthy, both internally within our own and in others. So I love what you're saying. And I think it's so spot on, and it adds so much to this message. It's just beautiful. Thank you.
Well, it's interesting. So I was studying with a teacher last year named Igor Kufayev, who's also all over YouTube. He lives in London now, but he's from Uzbekistan, and teaches a really ancient practice of Kashmir Shaivism, which I had never even heard of. It comes out of the Vedic traditions in Central Asia, which my daughter just learned about Central Asia. We were learning the countries in Central Asia, which I have to say, I'm a well-educated person. I know nothing about Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Uzbek, like name them, find them. I can't do that. So anyway, that's his land where he's from. And so just a plug for Igor, because he's a wonderful teacher. But one of the things he talked about, and we didn't go deep in it, but it really resonated as true for me, is how particularly religious structures, but certainly I think social and political structures as well, have severed the connection between the heart and the root chakra, have severed he said, from an energetic standpoint, it's more the Vedic tradition rather than Chinese medicine. In the Vedic tradition, there are relationships between these different energy centers or chakras, and there's a direct line that's been severed or unrecognized that is from the pelvis to the heart. It's an actual energy line, and that is about we can talk about it with sexuality that also is coupled with love, right? Intentional sexuality. And when you talk about a lot of the sexual practices that you were talking about, which is like, blow it open, let's all have orgasms together, and which is fine if that's what you want to do. But for a lot of people, if it's not contained with that intentional love, it can be another way to sever or even feel abused.
Absolutely. Or to abuse, both and well said. Very well said. That is so fascinating. I'm so glad you brought him up. And wow.
No, I'm interested. So I'm curious about, how do you help people? How can we, offer some stuff to people at home to become more aware of this within themselves? And what do we do to make this a more conscious, healthy aspect of ourselves?
Absolutely. I have I can share a link too, but like I have a meditation called the Pelvic Wisdom meditation. And so that's really fun, and is actually a neat way to kind of be able to gather a word or phrase or a message from deep within of the pelvis. But I think to answer your question specifically, so like I like to use that just as a daily practice, as a practice at every new moon, to be able to kind of set intentions and really tune in. So it's very beautiful. But to answer your question, I think the most important place to start is to come back to that very beautiful, just simple awareness and tune in, so as we're sitting here right now, as somebody is listening, if they're listening in standing or sitting or lying down or any position in which they're in, being aware of what's happening in the lower half of the body, that for some, I think it's important to notice that if you start going towards the pelvis, and let's say you're focusing on your tailbone, or you're focusing on like that clock in which you're sitting on of those pelvic floor muscles, or if you focus on, you know, an internal organ such as your bladder or your rectum or uterus or prostate, if that feels comfortable to you, then stay in that space and kind of be able to linger there and notice what it feels to keep your attention there. For others, that may feel very triggering very quickly. And so keeping that awareness and that beautiful, loving respect of, okay, let me come up a little bit higher, you know, to like the belly button, or let me just focus my attention on my hips or the knees or the toes, you know, anything on the lower half of the body really can begin to increase this awareness. So that's one of the things. What I found when I was working in the clinic was that less is more. Less is more. And so it really is not about, okay, how can I do, you know, I need to learn like the 50 different exercises. I do make sure that I do them all the time and all of that. You know, this part of the body is so, I mean, you know, it's so feminine. It loves just to be attended to. And it doesn't require, you know, all this success. It doesn't need all the excessive stuff.
So what is the clinic that you're referring to? I'm just curious, just for a little bit.
Oh, yeah. So I kind of had an interesting hybrid where, you know, my business has morphed so many times over the years, but when I was doing the pelvic floor physical therapy portion of that, I was working in a physical therapy clinic at a hospital. And, you know, through the hospital system, people would come in and see me. And then I also had a private practice. So today, as it stands today, while I don't do that work anymore and I don't run everything, you know, through insurance, and I don't have kind of that like hospital scheduling system, people every once in a while still kind of come. I'm sitting here right now in what's called the Zen Den that my clients have dubbed this little yoga retreat space. And some people will come for private retreats. And with that, sometimes we'll include pelvic floor work, both sometimes internal, also external. You can get a lot done in working externally, and even just working kind of within your own self with no one laying hands on you at all. But I've definitely found that ability to kind of work manually, so like releasing some of the tissues and the scar tissues, or you know, different stress and tension points that people have physically can be very, very important. Yeah.
I have two clients who have both, one a man and one a woman, who have both really suffered with pelvic floor agony, I would call it, even.
Yes.
Extremely painful and really difficult to even get regular doctors to acknowledge that there's an issue, that they just kind of go, you know, do some stretches or so, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
So
drink some wine.
Wine, right? Or here's this muscle relaxant, or here's So for people at home who might be really suffering with pelvic floor pain, or know someone who is, so there's this really just being able to bring awareness and onto this part of the body is like, it sounds like a really potent first step. I know. Is there anything else that you would suggest or offer to people in how to proceed in their own healing process? Oh no, you froze. I hope that wasn't me. Ooh, what's happening? Mine is good. Okay.
There we go.
Here we are. Okay, so you froze. So I don't know where you froze.
I'll start again. Yeah, because it was okay. I think I know where to start.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yep. You know, I appreciate you saying that both a man and a woman client have been dealing with this, because, you know, there's so much more out there about women than there is about men. And both groups, I think, are suffering, you know, more so men in silence, and it's not okay. But, you know, that first step of being able to really bring awareness in. And when you're talking about, like, we'll talk specifically about pain, there's some really interesting research that it's older now, because it was kind of back in the early 2000s. But what it showed was that when we're talking about pelvic floor tension, so what I mean by that is, like, we have an optimal length. All the muscles in our body are really supposed to work well at an optimal length. But sometimes these muscles will get too tense, or they'll get too loosey-goosey. So it used to be in the world of pelvic floor that we just said, just do a bunch of Kegels, you know, just do a bunch of Kegels, it'll all go away. But really, if we think about, like, take your shoulder, if you think about doing a bunch of shoulder lifts all day long, you're going to have a hurt neck and a hurt shoulder. Right. So it's important to make sure that there's pliability, there's flexibility in these muscles. And so what this research found, it was looking at the tension of the muscles, and it found that anxiety caused higher pelvic floor tension, so higher muscular tension, than a perceived sexual threat.
Whoa.
I know. And, like, I always pause, because I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. And it's significant. We're not just talking about, you know, like a few percentage degrees up higher. I mean, we're talking about, like, a significant difference. And so then, you know, of course, then we have to be careful, because it's not all just in here, right? It's this beautiful combination of things that really starts to wreak havoc. But so what I like to talk about is, like, we have to reestablish a relationship. So I use the example of, if you're going to the SPCA, you know, to the local dog shelter, and we're going in to visit an abused dog, you don't just, like, go running up in there like, hey, you know, like, and expect that to go well. And that's why this awareness is, like, number one, and this gentleness and this calmness. And if it doesn't feel good to spend time breathing in and just focusing on and releasing the pelvic floor just by your own awareness, then sometimes you go to your little toe, or you go to your hips, or you go to your knees, you go to something that's comfortable, because you have to start reestablishing a relationship when somebody has been in complete agony. And I'm sure, you know, nobody knows this better, you know, than you with the work that you do. We have to go so slow.
No, but I love metaphor is so helpful, right? And so a story, right? And so this idea of an abused dog, right? And if we're talking about pain, we're talking about anxiety, which is a fancy word for fear or terror, right? And that's held in the body because of unresolved trauma or neglect or abuse, or, you know, that we really are talking about a part of ourselves. And we often tend to think of ourselves as just a unit, like, I'm me, right? But when we think about it, but we can start to think about having relationships with these different aspects of our body. Like, what's my relationship with my hair? Do I like my hair? I happen to like my hair? I have good hair, right? But some people don't, and they hate their hair, right? So that's a bummer to look in the mirror and say, I hate my hair, you know. And what's my relationship with my heart? And what's my relationship with my pelvis? What's my relationship with my knees or my feet? And that these are relationships, and that they might not be close relationships, or they might be damaged relationships, or, you know, they're relationships that need to be mended and cared for. Just like, if the goal is to bring the best out of this abused dog, and people may not know, but abused dogs, when they come into a good home, can be some of the most amazing pets because of their gratitude and what they've been through. And now they have something to compare to having a loving home and having an unloving home. But it's a gap to get there. And
Right.
how do we bring our pelvis and our pelvic floor, if it has been abused or neglected or shamed or damaged, how do we care for it and have a relationship with it? I love that.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. And it can happen in so many different ways for different people. You know, I mean, some people are more drawn to dance or to stretching, you know, and hip release exercises and stretching work and yoga and meditation. You know, some of it can just come in so many different ways. And the core alignment method comes in is that the C is the first step, and that's just connecting with your physical core, like learning what is your physical core, you know, what is your pelvis. Like, I loved how, you know, we started with this today. So naturally it's like, what is your pelvic floor? What is it? What is this area? What is it supposed to do? What does it feel like as you sit, as you do a lunge, as you dance, as you move, when you get stressed? You know, I had a situation with my youngest son that I was helping him through, and I noticed that the right side of my pelvic floor during that experience just was so tense, so tense. But you know, most of the time, again, when we're living higher up, we wouldn't feel that. And so then that's the first step, is kind of noticing, wow, what's happening right now? And it's so symbolic, like constipation, for example, right, is very symbolic to, you know, just kind of holding on to too much. And so with pelvic floor, it's really fun because, you know, we can go, gosh, if somebody is dealing with prolapse, so that's where like the organs, I call it, are going down south to Florida, and they're not really sitting in the right location that they need to be anymore. You know, that's often like, where are we letting the pressures of life kind of just really weigh us down? Where are we letting energy leak, you know, with incontinence? There's so many different little aspects of that comes in. And so the pelvic floor is often so misunderstood, and it's not trying to make our lives a living hell, but it certainly can succeed because of just the past historical relationship that we all have with it. But the C is starting with that physical core, that awareness, being willing to check in and learn.
And so the C stands for?
Connect to your physical core.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so let's walk us through the core. So what do the other things stand for?
Let's walk through it. So a teeny bit of background first. You know, when I was doing, like I said, just pelvic floor physical therapy work one-on-one with my clients all the time, I started seeing these kind of miraculous things. I wasn't doing a ton of exercises with them. It wasn't like I wasn't doing any, you know, thing wild and crazy. In fact, I'd give them one or two things. And it was really miraculous to see what was happening. And it wasn't just physically happening. It was that people were coming in and saying, you know, my relationship has changed with my spouse, or I'm able to stick up for myself now, and I didn't have the courage to do that before. Reliving, again, dreams that they've had in their career all along. And they're like, you know, I went into such and such work, but you know, what I've always wanted to do was this. Things just were unlocking, and I wasn't expecting that. What I did expect was that it would unlock memories, issues, things that they had never even shared. You know, if I had a $10 bill for every time that I heard, you know, I haven't even shared this with my counselor before, because, you know, you go into that area and there's just, there's things that we start gently wading through. But so the core alignment process came because of that, because I've always been interested in lasting lifestyle changes, like really being able to rewrite these old kind of contracts within ourselves, you know. And I'm sure, Renee, you and I are cut from the same cloth, right? So, so that's there. And so to me, it was such a pelvic floor physical therapy was just such a jumping off point, because it was like, oh my gosh, like this is a lifestyle. Like this is something that can radically shift everything in your life. And it can kind of move the needle in all these different ways. And so that's how the core alignment method was birthed. And so it's always started with C, connecting to the physical core. So that may be sometimes through diaphragmatic breathing and thinking and awareness of the pelvic floor. That can be through just noticing it. That could be through exercise, through, stretches, strengthening, all these different things.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there was the O, and that's opening and overcoming to hidden blocks. So once you establish a relationship with your physical core and you're willing to kind of, I'm going to, point again to the image behind you, you're willing to kind of go into that shadow and that darkness of that pathway work. Yes. Thank you. Exactly. Then you start becoming aware of these, parts within you that have been neglected, that have something to say, that are trying to communicate with you. You actually become more aware of the things that are blocking you. They're old contracts that you've written with yourself, that maybe used to work, and they come out of trauma. They come out of stressful experiences in which you buffered and boundaried yourself, whether you were aware of the word boundary and set it, when you were younger or not, because most of us didn't walk around saying, I'm going to set a boundary now. We just, right. We just
build some walls and keep everybody out. Thank you very much. Yep.
Thank you. Okay. So, so we have to, really being able to open and overcome to those. And then R, reconnect to that inner wisdom. And so that's where the pelvic wisdom meditation comes in. When we reconnect, I really do believe that this starts by really jumping off and swimming in this area of awareness of the pelvic floor and asking for these messages, for asking for this particular part of your soul again, to be
the inside part, that little part there. Yeah. The wisdom.
It starts in the pelvis, yet mostly we say at best the gut, right? So that's the R, that's the reconnecting to pelvic wisdom. That's reconnecting to this beautiful, unconditional, loving, wise part of us that is the part that's like, go left, stop going right, say this, it's just so special. And it often doesn't follow logic, right? And so it takes trust. And then that's the E, which is emerging and taking action. And that's really where, can't see all of me, but where we're bringing that wisdom up.
Do me a favor and stand up and actually do that.
Yeah. Let's see here.
And you back up and actually,
being able to come here and then bring it all the way up.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, this is, I love it. It's again, we have, if we think about it, and I'm going to do the same thing. If we think about it from the masculine and feminine aspects that have to be together. Right.
They have to be.
So, and a lot of times when we think about inspiration, it's coming in 7th chakra, it's coming in from the ether, and we've become disconnected from the earth wisdom. We've become disconnected from nature. We've become disconnected from the mystery and the unpredictability, the unknown of the feminine, which comes up. And to think about being inspired from this direction, to think about receiving from this direction, about wisdom coming up from the depths rather than just always coming down from above. That is, and then, I wish I could do a little screen share, but I wouldn't be able to find it. There's an energetic formation called a torus, which is like a donut. And so if you think of a donut and the energy here, I'll use my bowl. So if this was open at the bottom, the energy is flowing out and then back up inside, so that, and all the way around it. So it's like an energy donut with energy coming out and in, and it can also go the other way. And so both the lower part and the upper part are engaged in this flow of energy. And I love how you're pointing to the truth that I always see, which is like people are really, some of the stuff you even talked about, it's like, oh, there's unresolved stuff or agreements we made or blocks. And it's like, oh, but underneath all that is incredible life energy, our authentic self, connection with the larger consciousness system. I mean, brilliance and happiness and joy and freedom and all kinds of stuff that we don't even think is possible. We keep it contained. And can we develop whatever it is we need of the support and the skills and the container and the help and the courage to be able to stick our toe in there and to start to experience the goodness and the brilliance and the amazing life energy that lives in the middle of that, which is often scary and yucky, but we go through that and whoa, it's like the only enemy of darkness is the light, right? So we just have to bring the light in there, and then it's not dark anymore.
Right. And as for myself, there have been so many tough times. There have been so many things that I never thought that I would be experiencing in my life, and since having children too. This lifestyle has brought about such a richness to connect more deeply with myself, to slow down, to speed up, and to advocate and allow courage to take over. Whereas before, recovering people pleaser sort of, it just has shifted so much richness, to be able to really know what's going on and what I'm really feeling, at any given time. Yeah. The other thing that I love about that image, and again, it would take me too long to find the picture. I apologize. But in the very center, you have what's called the perineal body. And so the perineal body is in between the opening to the rectum and the opening to the vagina. And that area is often, it's like a kind of a fascially thick area, but it really is that true center point, where everything is kind of pulling up and in. And so many people end up kind of having tightness in that perineal body. And when you release that, and you can even do that through self, internal and external release work, that can just make such a difference. And I just love, kind of connecting all the dots here, because this stuff is, it's physical, and physical is also just the beginning, which is so beautiful,
Well, for me,
experiencing.
I mean, the physical is a correlation or a metaphor with the metaphysical.
Yes.
It's like the personal and the transpersonal. And that's the brilliance of each body, is that, when we go into these different parts of our body, we have access to all this information that our intellectual self doesn't have access to. Like there's the thought brain, and then there's this wisdom part. It's funny, they talk about the gut brain, and I don't know if people have heard that term, the gut brain. It's like, I don't tend to feel things in my heart. I tend to feel things in my gut. And which is, like just above my belly button. That's my real feeling center. But when I think about it, the pelvic bowl is like the skull that holds my gut instincts. And to think about even deeper in there feels kind of like the limbic brain. Like there's this even deeper, more primal, ancestral, natural wisdom that's tied to a much larger information and energy.
Yes.
I'm thrilled.
It's amazing.
It's like so exciting.
Yeah, it's amazing. One last thing that I'll add too, because what you just said so beautifully made me think about it. I was listening to another podcast recently, and it was she was a professionally trained singer, and she was also a voice coach. And she was looking at the anatomy of the throat and the voice box and the larynx and all those little beautiful parts in there. and they look very similar to the makeup of the pelvic floor. So interestingly, in development, as we're developing as an embryo, the two parts of the throat and the pelvic floor go hand in hand and are created around the same time. I know. And so this is why, again, like we do kind of need this upward emerging and being able to not just stir this place, but be in community, be supported by those, such as yourself, Renee, who really can help bring this stuff out into the light that we do find once we go within, to share it with others, because I really do believe that we have an opportunity here to shift the trajectory of our own health and well-being, and therefore then kind of kick the dominoes forward of in our family unit, whatever that means, in the community, in the world. We need these ideas. We need to unlock, this creation. This is where all of life starts. Every idea, every seed literally starts here.
I just love it. So great to talk to you and learn about the core method and this for me really potent, useful idea of just bringing awareness, bringing consciousness, bringing care. What's the C you used?
Connecting to the physical core.
With just with this area of ourself, and to just be present and gently open to receive the energy. There's my own core of what it has to offer us, and to be inspired and to be healed from the bottom up, as well as the top down, and how those two can interact with each other. And really, I mean, I know you said this in a different way. A lot of us want to change the world, and it really does start with healing ourselves. Like, that's the best gift that we can offer to the world, is how can I open and connect and receive. So beautiful.
Well, thank you for willing to be here. I love it.
I'm just thrilled to talk to you. So how can people get in touch? We'll have links in the show notes, but how can people get in touch with you? What do you want to offer as far as?
Yeah, would love it. So I have a membership, a community where it's called Living from the Core. It's a sacred community, and we practice for an entire year, really this core alignment method and living from the core. And the doors of that will open at the beginning of January. I also do a pelvic wisdom meditation, a word of the year. So we come together on Zoom, and I don't have the exact date in my head at the moment, but it's like January 14th or something like that, of 2024. And so we'll be able to gather your word, or, that wisdom message for the year. So I can, kind of let people go to the website, contact me through the website, please. Would love to connect. I'm also on Insight Timer. That's how you and I met. So, can be connected through there. And I'll definitely share the link for the pelvic wisdom meditation that kind of puts you on the email list, and you're welcome to stay on. And some people, prefer just to gather that meditation and not stay on the email list, but that way it'll keep people abreast of really any offerings that I have. And I work one-on-one with clients. I interestingly do all my work over the phone. Instead of Zoom. I have, that's really kind of when my intuition kicks in, when I can interestingly hear the tone of someone's voice, as it connects with their pelvis. So thank you for having me here.
All right. Well, you got to call Dr. Sara so she can listen to your pelvis.
That's right.
You can have a conversation, and then she can help you to have a conversation yourself.
I love it.
Sara, blessings on the amazing work that you're doing, and so lovely to connect with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.